Well, it's that time of the morning when we get to take a look at what's making the news on the front page of the international papers. I'm joined in the studio by author and diversity consultant, Mr. Vernal Scott. Good morning, Vernal.
Good morning, James.
Where shall we start? Shall we start with this day?
Yes, why not?
The race goes to the wire for the Senate presidency. We sort of touched on this on the show yesterday. Bit of a complicated story, but it looks like there could be light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, well, you know, I think there's a lot of fuss with elections when things don't go the way predicted. And I think the president, needs to, I think, a core lesson that I think all politicians need to learn, both here and abroad, is open up, share with the people, communicate with the people, because what I'm getting from that story is somebody who's feeling like he might not be around for much longer. You know, so I don't know. I just think it will blow over, really.
We shall see what goes on there. Meanwhile, should we look at Turkey, because of course that's the big story of the day?
Yeah, I'm personally very happy to see that the left, if you like, of the political spectrum have got a better showing.
Well, it's on a lot of the daily papers. The Hurriyet Daily News, they've devoted their whole front page, lots of different stories there. How's it going to play out and all of that? But what's your take on all this?
Well, you know, it's either going to be a coalition or some sort of, minority government. But what I think can't be undone, and what I think is a trend, is that the people on the left, all the groups that have been fairly marginalised in the past 13 years, have said, look, we're here and we're growing. We have got issues that we want you to consider. And I think that the president needs to pay attention to that.
Because this has blocked his ability to be able to get the presidential republic that he would like.
Yeah.
Kind of flying in the face of what Ataturk was trying to get at all those years ago, keeping it as a secular state. Essentially, everybody gets representation, but this little 10% rule kind of managed to block all that. All of a sudden, the HDP gets past the threshold.
Yes.
It's proper multi-party politics there, and it's all being represented.
It is, and I think that, again, as with the earlier story, the voices of all the people need to be heard, because people are voting in the way that they have because they're feeling that the current government isn't listening and isn't giving them what they need. So if he's wise, the president will actually change. But, if he's unwise, then he'll carry on as before, and then things will only get worse.
Erdogan has been a lot more vocal for a lot of reasons. He's been putting his head above the parapet quite a lot. Is this just a bit of chest beating? Is he just being statesmanlike, or what do you think the take is on that?
Well, I think something that is brewing in the background, frankly, is Islamic State. And I think that with all the politics to the fore, what I think the president needs to be much more concerned about, as well as listening to his people, is what Islamic State are doing in the background. Because I think that they are being quite strategic in their approach with regard to Turkey. And I'm fairly confident that in a few months from now, we're going to be hearing a lot more about what Islamic State are doing in respect of Turkey. So I think that the whole election business will sort itself out. They will find a way of working. But I think everybody there needs to be, I think all of us need to be much more concerned with it.
The HDP were wanting much more secular politics. They wanted sort of protection for gay rights. They wanted more sort of women's issues raised, not to mention being generally pro-Kurdish. So, like you say, I'm sure we'll see that develop over the next few days and indeed months. Daily Mail, so from one man who's sort of slightly safe but slightly weakened to our own Prime Minister David Cameron saying, back me or I'll sack you.
Yes, my gut feeling, James, I don't know what yours is that, the country, when it gets the chance to vote, will vote to stay in Europe.
Not helped, no doubt, by the EU being able to actually back the yes vote and put money behind it.
Yes, but even more, I think, in respect of the Conservative Party, which David Cameron is the leader of, it's always been in turmoil about regarding Europe, whether to stay or leave, and
It's fractured the party before.
it has. And I think on this occasion he's making it clear that if you're going to stay in my cabinet, then I expect you to vote in respect of staying in Europe. But we will see. We've got a year to go before that election.
Plus, we've got to see what Cameron can actually get out of the rest of Europe in terms of redefining the relationship. There was an interesting poll a few weeks ago that suggested that the British public were actually more pro-Europe than they were a few years ago. Now, whether that's to do with what happened with the Scottish independence referendum, or whether people just like being able to travel to France and Spain for their holidays, who knows?
Yes, well, I think Europe works, and it works well. And to be a little island in the midst of Europe, it doesn't make sense.
Or tow us out in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yes.
Where should we go next?
Well, I think that there's a story which might be a bit too early in the day for your viewers.
Where are you going with
Which
this?
is the Times of India, and a story about a two-finger test in respect of rape victims.
It's just a little mention on the front page, and it's pretty horrific what Delhi is saying hospitals can now do. Yes.
And the implication, without being too explicit about it, is to see whether the woman who's the victim is actually
and this is specific to rape
used
cases, isn't it?
Yes, specific to rape cases. But the test kind of is a way of suggesting that she might be quite used to sexual activity or not, and it's obviously very intrusive. And I personally think it's a pretty outrageous test. But the good part of it is
adds insult to injury to the attack in the first place.
It does, but apparently the woman will be able to consent to the test or not. Frankly, it doesn't seem to make any rational sense to me, because somebody's either been raped or they haven't been, and that there are other ways of getting evidence, to substantiate a claim of rape. So it does seem inappropriate to me.
The other little story on the front cover of the Times of India, there's a big advert for Cadbury's, but then just to the left, your chocolate may mostly be vegetable oil, but I think that's a story for another day. Right. Where should we go next?
I was looking at the Daily Telegraph, and the bride and groom will now cut the cupcake. Now, I'm a huge fan of cakes. I really, if I have a fetish, it's cakes.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
With us at this time in the morning.
I'll bring in one of mine one day.
Okay.
I can cook wine cakes or bake them. No, apparently the traditional wedding cake is on its way out, and in its place are apparently cupcakes, which are individually made and
you see towers of these things.
Yes, apparently they are the thing to have. And, and I think if it's your wedding, go for what works for you. But I can't see the traditional wedding cake disappearing.
But they're talking about this being as a sort of a reaction to leaner, tougher times, that having big cakes, beautifully decorated, what have you, very, very costly, thousands of pounds, and yet they can do 200 cupcakes and little production line and just decorate. And it's all about impact, but it's all about saving money at the same time. Do you think that holds water?
I'm not sure. I think, cooking, or baking rather, one cake is a lot easier than making multiple cakes. And frankly, they all have to go into the same oven, whether you're cooking a whole load of them or one.
Cupcakes are quicker.
Well, they might be quicker,
20 minutes.
But they're much more fussy. If you're going to be decorating various cupcakes, if you've got 200 wedding guests, it's a lot of cupcakes sort of produced. Whereas if you've got a tower, the traditional tower of wedding cakes, then everybody's going to get fed, and you cut them according to the size of your guest list. So I think it works.
But you don't then have any of these sort of happy moments where they've got the knife out and they're sort of trying to struggle through the royal icing.
Yes.
Modern times. Where should we go next? We've only got a couple of minutes.
Well,
Apparently we've got 30 seconds. Let's make it quick.
Okay, so we heard recently about foreigners being attacked and even murdered in South Africa. So it's the Pretoria Times or News, and apparently now the killings have stopped, but the police are harassing the people concerned. So that's, in 30 seconds, that's what's now happening.
They've just given us another minute, but it turns out we don't need it. Vernal Scott, thank you ever so much.